My name is Adam Kuda, and I am the Community Marketing Specialist for Shell Games. And I am so honored to be here presenting for GDC, first-time GDC presenter, and really excited to get talking. Today, we're going to be talking about expanding a single-player game to a multiplayer experience using Discord. Now, I do need to preface and say that we are not sponsored by Discord, and anything that you learn from this presentation does not have to be applied using Discord. You can use other platforms. We've just found that Discord resonates really well with our community. So feel free to enjoy that knowledge. All right, so let me dive in by telling you guys a little bit about me and who I am, why you should listen to me, right? So like I said, my name is Adam Kuda, and I'm the Community Marketing Specialist for Shell Games. Now, my background is in community. I graduated from Full Sail University with a creative writing for entertainment degree, then got into some customer support roles, consumer insights and analytics, social media, and all of that kind of blended together to get me to marketing where I am today. Now, currently, I manage the social media channels and the community for Shell Games' original IP. So games like I Expect You to Die and Until You Fall, which we'll get into just a little bit. But most importantly, I am Jade's dad. And Jade is my adorable little puppy who you'll get to know in a little bit. Let's next talk about Shell Games. Now, this isn't a pitch for our studio, but I thought a little context would help. So Shell Games is an independent studio that's been around for almost 20 years. We were founded by the brilliant mind of Jesse Shell, who literally wrote the book about game design. So definitely worth checking out. Awesome man. Now, as a studio, we have produced and worked on and developed numerous variety of projects, from client-based projects to location-based experiences at museums and theme parks, and of course, our original IP. But we're going to be focusing on those original IP now. So let me introduce the first one to you, which is I Expect You to Die. Now, I Expect You to Die came out in 2017, and it is a VR escape room puzzle game that has a kind of humorous and witty James Bond spy aesthetic going on, right? Now, it is highly praised as a must-try VR experience, and a lot of the community consider it one of the best introductions to the VR platform. So this isn't me being biased, it's actually community talk. I highly recommend it, though, just for the opening theme song alone. So definitely check it out. In addition, I Expect You to Die 2 is going to be coming out later this year. So, there's that fun fact. The next game that we're going to be talking about is Until You Fall. And Until You Fall is another VR game that we made, and it is a sword-fighting roguelite experience that has this neon, synthwave, energetic aesthetic. And it's all about being a badass sword fighter and taking down monsters. How can you beat that? Now, this came out of early access just last year, and because of that, community has been such an important part of its growth and development, which is why we have such a heavy emphasis on it now. Okay, enough of the plugs and the context. Let's talk about why you guys are actually here, right? So how are we turning this single-player game into a multiplayer experience? Well, let me introduce you all to the Jth Method. Okay, I admit, I'm way too obsessed with my puppy. It's fine. So, the Jth Method, this is how I form all of my challenges and how I've the method to my madness, right? We're going to start with the first step, which is jumping to conclusions. I know it's a little weird to have the first step be about conclusions, right? But it's the basis of my madness. So what I want any of you to do is to make an assumption about your community, something broad, something specific, just any kind of jump to a conclusion, right? So for example, something like, my community favors competition. Something as simple as that. So you need to jump to your conclusion. And then after you have that conclusion, we're going to apply some action to it, right? We want to form an activity or a challenge or a quest that really like complements that conclusion that you have, or that totally challenges it. For me personally, I like to either amplify that conclusion by 100 or totally turn it on its head and test the waters. It's a fun experiments, right? Now, the third step is data gather and listen. We don't want to wait until the end of our activity after we've started it to see what's going on with it. We want to be watching the results as they happen. Who's participating? What are they focusing on? How are the community working together? Or what are they most competing for? It's a key aspect to quality community management is listening. That's the most important part. So if there's anything that you take away from this presentation, it should be that. And then finally, the last step of the JADE process is to evaluate and learn. After the activity is completed, we're going to see how it held up against your conclusion. Did it prove or disprove your hypothesis? Like what actually happened, right? As you continue to do more and more of these challenges, you'll have much more quantitative and hopefully qualitative information that you can kind of compare between them. And this is really, really important, because these evaluations will hopefully lead you to some new conclusions that can then continue that cycle. Rinse and repeat. So basically, I just explained the scientific method, which we probably learned in high school. So there's that. But it's totally fine. Let me now kind of show you an example of this in process. So with an actual challenge that I issued for the I Expect You to Die Discord server. Now, this is actually what I did as we were planning to launch I Expect You to Die's Discord server. As I mentioned, I Expect You to Die came out several years ago, but we only just started our Discord this year. So our goal of this kind of challenge, not the conclusion, but the goal was to gather all of our community into one space, this Discord. And how was I going to be able to do that? Well, the conclusion that I drew was that social media is our strongest reach. So I'm going to really hone all of my efforts and focus my efforts into getting the word out and raising attention via Twitter was my main focus, right? That was my main priority. So I really wanted to use Twitter to get our followers to be interested in this Discord. So the next step was applying action. So what I did is on National Morse Code Day, or National Learn Morse Code Day, I posted a Morse code key. And this is a simple and innocent enough post. And, we're a spy-based puzzle game, so it didn't seem too out of the ordinary. But I followed this up by posting daily messages that hid Morse code letters in their content. And some of these letters were really not hidden. They're blatantly in your face in plain sight. So I was hoping that doing that would really spark some attention of our Twitter followers. And additionally, each of these letters would, okay, let me back up 1 second. So the letters then, players would find the letters and it would spell out the link for the invite code for our Discord server. So each of these posts had the next letter for that invite code. They didn't know that it was for an invite code, but they knew that it was something, right? And in addition to this, to get even more eyes on it, for some of those posts, I tagged content creators on the original content of that post to not only pull in our followers, but also the followers of content creators who had made content for our game. So trying to really capitalize on that Twitter aspect, right? And I really expected the community to pick up on these hidden letters and work together to decipher it. Well, using the third step, data gathering and listening, I found out that it wasn't Twitter where the conversation was sparking, but instead on our Until You Fall Discord. Now, this worked so well in my favor because not only was it raising attention to the I Expect You to Die going ons and the fact that something was happening on our Until You Fall server, but people were coming from social media to our Until You Fall server, which was a win, and then talking about it on the I Expect You to Die channel of our Discord server. It was awesome waterfall of events it was great. So that led to finally the end of our reveal, and the players figured out that it was a Discord invite link, and they joined the server right away. And then a couple days later, we officially posted the link, so people who didn't do the hidden code were able to join the community, and it was time to evaluate and learn the final step of the Jade process. So what I learned from this was that creating a Discord was absolutely the best case scenario for us. Not only did this campaign really prove that Discord was a place that they like to gather to communicate with each other, but it was now available for the I Expect You to Die community as well as our Until You Fall one. So it's just kind of wins all around. But in addition to that, it really stressed and highlighted that our players loved solving puzzles. Now, this is an I Expect You to Die server, which is a puzzle game, so that really shouldn't be surprising. But what was a little surprising, and maybe not surprising, but exciting, was their joy and how much they embraced the idea of working together for these solutions. And since then, that led me to a new hypothesis or conclusion that the players like working together to solve complex challenges. So since then, we've continued to do hidden message posts and campaigns and puzzles for our community on a nearly monthly basis that have gone over very well. Okay, so where's all the multiplayer talk on this? Like cool, you made a Discord. Awesome. Okay, well, I could go on with the same Jade Cycle breakdown for all of the challenges that I've issued, but I'm imagining that you probably get the point. So now I kind of want to focus in on potential different types of challenges that you can issue that really implement multiplayer elements, even though the games are single player. Now, for this, I'm going to switch gears and we're going to focus on Until You Fall instead of I Expect You to Die. So in my mind, there are two different branches of multiplayer challenges, cooperative and competitive. Let's talk about cooperative first. So cooperative challenges bring the players together and they can work as a team for a common goal, right? You're cooperative. So of this type, there are two potential challenge branches, so to say. The collection branch and the player pairing branch. So let's focus in on the collection branch right now. As an example, in November of 2020, around Thanksgiving, we hosted the Spirit of Giving Challenge. Now, let me give you some context on how this challenge worked. Essentially, in Until You Fall, players can earn Aether, which is this in-game resource that you use to upgrade your weapons or to purchase new weapons. And as you progress through the game and you finish a game, as you end your play session, there's a result screen that shows how much Aether you have gained through your run. And that is something that always happens, right? Well, players are kind of starting to dismiss Aether, right? I was noticing that no one was really picking it up and people were, talking like, oh, I've unlocked all the weapons, so what do I do with it? Like, we need something to do with Aether. So I was like, okay, well, let's turn this. That was my conclusion, was that Aether needed a new purpose, right? Like, players are sick of Aether. So how can I spin that on its head, right? So the action that I took was issuing this challenge, the Spirit of Giving. So how the challenge worked is that players would submit their results screen and I would add all of their Aether values together into this community pool value. Now, this isn't reflected in the game in any way. It was only on our Discord server. So, sorry. So they would pool together their Aether, and there was this reward, this chance to reward. If you participated, you were entered into a raffle, and the more Aether that they collected and the more players that submitted to this contest, the better the rewards and the more winners there would be. Now, I had originally set a couple tiers of like, if you reach this threshold, you would win this physical prize. And if you reach this threshold, you could win this physical prize. And that really motivated people. And I do want to stress, I mentioned physical prizes, but you don't have to do that. We often use real life swag and promo items, but literally our servers love emotes themed around our game. They love Discord roles and acknowledgement. Like, you don't have to go out and do full blown physical items. Like, you can reward players in other ways. We've also, one of the other really cool rewards that we've done is we've rebranded our social media channels based on winners of a certain challenge, which I'll get into just a little bit later. Anyway, this amplifying of the prizes and this working together in this spirit of giving challenge, so that really sparked a drive to get people involved and to really work as a team. And I actually ended up having to come up with new prizes because they surpassed the threshold of Aether that I originally expected, which is really exciting. Now, the second branch of cooperative challenges are the player pairing challenges. Now, while collection-based challenges focus on uniting the community, these ones really focus on pairing people together. I think more like couch co-op, right? Like, it's a much more intimate connection. So to try this for the first time, I created the Match Made in Rokar Challenge, which we hosted in February of 2021. Now, for this, players would find a partner to mirror their weapon sets while completing a run. So, for example, in Until You Fall, you can pick weapons for your right and your left hand. So I would complete it with the Heart Splitter in my right hand and the Ritual Dagger in my left, and I would need to find a partner to do the Ritual Dagger in their right and the Heart Splitter in their left. They'd have to find those pairs, and that's how they would earn points, right? Well, this didn't work out very well for me, actually. And a lot of players ended up opting to mirror themselves to get points instead of trying to pair with other players. And honestly, through the evaluation process and that Jade process that I mentioned, I really blame myself for this. A lot of the process was complicated and a little convoluted for earning points. So it was easier for them to just match with themselves than it was to try to find an actual partner. And this was something that kind of became relevant and, noticed during the D section of the Jade process, where I was, data gathering and listening. But despite the failure of that conclusion, it's not to say that something like that couldn't actually work for our game. In fact, the community themselves actually developed what they call the Puppet Master mode, which is a perfect example of player pairing. Essentially, what they do is they all put on their headsets and hop into Discord's voice chat and pair off. So they're in pairs. And in Until You Fall, when you reach the end of a level, you're presented with 3 random augments that can upgrade your skills as you progress through your play, right? And they're randomly generated, so you don't know which ones you're going to get. Well, in the Puppet Master mode, you're paired with someone, and your partner then gets to pick which of those 3 that you have to take. So you can either be really friendly and give them the power up that they need, or give them that boost and refill of health, or you can be really cruel and give them something that is totally irrelevant for their weapon set or loadout. And it's a brilliant way of implementing that couch co-op experience into a single player game, and definitely worthy of noting in this presentation. Now, on the opposite side of the coin, we talked about collaborative. Well, now we're going to be talking about competitive, because let's face it, we all have players and members in our community who love to win. So let's start with the first branch of this, because just like the cooperative challenges, we also have 2 branches for competitives. So the first branch of this is factions, and this is kind of along the veins of like a Harry Potter house or a Pokemon Go team, right? Where do you belong? Like, for the Horde. This immediately joining one of these teams instantly gives you ownership and some kind of camaraderie with your teammates. You have a sense of pride in being a part of this team, and it's really something that we should capitalize on, right? However, I do want to kind of stress and iterate, like, part of the beauty of having these kind of teams is really playing up the fact of appealing to people's different interests, right? So for example, on the Until You Fall Discord server, we have 4 different factions. Each of the factions has their own primary color, right? That's very different. Each of them has their own primary weapon combination, so that is appealing to their, the gameplay side of things. And then each of them also have like a in-lore like mission statement, so to speak. So this way, we have 3 different ways that you can that players can feel attached to one of these factions. Either, hey, purple's my favorite color, so I'm going to be a Soul Tender. Or, I really like the idea of standing up for order and balance, so let me go into the Rune Guard. Or, I really like the Heart Splitter, so I'm going to join Unbroken. Like, there's a clear path for any type of player to instantly feel attached to one of these factions. Same is probably true for, look at Pokemon Go. Do you like yellow? You can join Team Instinct. There's multiple reasons and justifications for choosing each of the factions. Now, I'm getting a little sidetracked, but it's all important to say that there's a sense of pride. There's a reason why these people pick these factions, right? And they're attached to them. So this helps immediately boost that competitive drive. You want your team to win. And so capitalizing on that, these kind of challenges can really, really drive that multiplayer experience, right? You're putting different teams. It's team sports, right? So when I do this, when I do faction challenges, I typically will have these challenges focus on each team focusing on obtaining the same result, but they have different ways that they have to do them. Again, capitalizing on those individual differences of the factions and really playing that up, but working towards the same goal. So there is that sense of, I did this and I want to do this way, so I'm going to join that team. It seems to work really well, and we have a lot of people who are very dedicated to their teams, even if it's not the winning team, which is really, really exciting. Now, as a side comment, I did mention I'd bring this up again, but this is actually where we had that reward of rebranding our social media channels. We had a faction challenge where one of the factions won, and we rebranded our social media channels to be reflective of that team's colors and symbols, and really, promote that, hey, this faction won. And that not only drove some interest to our Discord, but it also helped reward the players for free. So pretty cool. Now, the second branch of competitive challenges is the one that we all kind of expect for competitive. It's leaderboards. It's speed runs and endurance tests and skill assessments and who can get the most points. It's stuff like that, right? Like figuring out who is the best. And that is not something to be taken lightly. There are so many competitive people, and that is absolutely an element of multiplayer play that you can implement in single player games. In fact, a lot of games build that in and have leaderboards for time trials and things like that built into their games. But you don't have to have that built into your games. You can implement that purely on your community side too. Now, I have a strong example of this being our Hero of Rokar tournament. We hosted this in April 2021, so just a couple months ago. We had 20 participants who entered and then narrowed it down into 4 finalists. And they all had to compete in crazy and difficult challenges And then we finally had our finals, which we broadcast on Discord. This is the first time that we'd ever done any kind of live, well, it wasn't live, but it was a pre-recorded broadcast, and we did a Discord watch party. And it was the first time that we'd ever done a watch party on the Discord. So we were kind of expecting mixed results, right? Well, it turns out we had 30 congruent viewers for this event. And all of them were just there to cheer on the finalists. And I mean, the finalists were there too, but we were all just there enjoying the competition and enjoying the event. And this was huge. This was great. For we had more participants in our watch party than we did in the challenge. So really, really proving that players may not necessarily be involved in the competitive spirit, but can join together for an event and celebration. Anyway, the finals video is also uploaded to our YouTube channel, and it has more than 300 views already. So even a couple months after, we're still getting engagement on it, which is really, really exciting. All right, so those are a couple examples of how you can use multiplayer elements for a single player game, but using the Jade process. Now, I do want to really just take a couple minutes to emphasize the importance of the final step in the Jade process, which is evaluate and learn. So I broke it down into a couple segments here, into a couple points. First being measuring success. Now, it's really important to track your participation and your elements. And this is going to depend on what kind of activities you have, how you're going to track those. I'm a huge spreadsheet person, so I have spreadsheets for literally every challenge I've ever issued. Anyway, but you can find information through this tracking that is really important, such as identifying players who have participated in every challenge. These are super fans, and those likely are going to keep participating. And if they stop participating, then maybe it's time to evaluate why, right? Or you may notice that you get a lot of participants in challenges that are heavily competitive or heavily cooperative. So it's really important to track these and see what's resonating with your community, right? The next thing is to reevaluate your strategies. So you want to, of course, start with a conclusion. So jump to conclusions, J for the Jade process. And then while it's going, you're going to be comparing the participation and engagement during the event. Remember, this is the D of the Jade process, which is to data gather. I do want to stress not to ignore other factors. And I have a good example of this. When I first started making challenges really heavily for our community, I issued the Rokari Safari, which was a creative-based challenges prompting people to submit fan art and take screenshots in game and really, really focus on that creative aspect as opposed to the skill. Well, we didn't get a lot of participants. We got some really, really cool entries, but it was mostly by the same people, and it was very few in number. So I kind of dismiss this as the community just wants to focus on skill, and that's totally fine. Well, factors change, and we launched the game out of early access. And then we launched the game on Quest, and we got a whole bunch of new Rune Knights joining the server. And I remember I brought up a video, or I brought up a challenge or something along the lines of the Rokari Safari, and all of these new members are like, wait a minute, we want to do this. We want creative challenges. Why hasn't that happened again? And it just kind of goes to show that reevaluating challenges that don't necessarily work in the past, that could be because different factors are in play or were in play. So always feel free to reevaluate and go back to some of the ones that you've tried, even if they weren't necessarily a hit before, because they might be now. So don't dismiss that. And then the last thing that I'd like to point out is active listening. I mentioned it earlier that listening is absolutely the most important part of being a quality community manager. So obviously, this is something I really need to stress. Now, listening can be done in a number of ways, whether that be lurking and evaluating feedback, or providing actual surveys, literally asking your community what they liked about a challenge, what they didn't like, what they want to see in challenges. This can be very, very valuable information. And there's no shame in asking, right? Sometimes the community doesn't know what they want, but sometimes they really do. So it's important to really keep that in mind. The other thing is, like I mentioned, the D step in the JADE process. Definitely data gather during the activity that you release. They will let you know when they're too confused or when they just don't get it or when they want more. And it's really important to capitalize on that. So again, here's just a quick slide summarizing the JADE process. Jump to conclusions, apply action, data gather and listen, and evaluate and learn. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was an honor to be here. I'm so excited that you guys chose to listen to me. And I have my contact information on the slide here. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or send me an email. If you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to help you or to talk you through or to share pictures of my dog. Again, please don't hesitate and join our Discord servers. We've got an Until You Fall and an I Expect You to Die Discord server, and you are more than welcome. So thank you again so much for your time. I hope you learned something, and have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and take care.